My name is Russell Castagnaro. I am the venture steward for Bufficorn Ventures. I'm also the chief of staff for ETHDenver and SporkDAO. So thank you for coming to ETHDenver. I really appreciate it. Saturday is normally our busiest day. And as most of you know, in the past we've had hackers working their little fingers off up until midnight on Saturday to get their submissions in time to be evaluated. This year, we tried to open things up to have everything due on 10 o'clock on Saturday morning so that we have the whole day available for them, so they can get some more out of the content, and so that when we see them tomorrow in the judging, they're not all totally eyes red, and they're freaking out because they're so stressed out. They actually have had maybe some sleep, or at least they're not as stressed out. So for those of you that are, in fact, hackers or founders or whatever, congratulations. I'm glad this Saturday is for you. And thanks for coming, and thanks for coming and hacking so early. I don't have a whole lot of slides to show you. And the first part, the thing I want to talk about is because we started 7 years ago as primarily a hackathon. And of course, most of you probably already know this, but we don't call our hackers hackers, we call them biddlers, because why build when you can biddle? If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. That's all I can say. But the idea is that we have all these teams, and even part of the Bufficorn Ventures thesis, which I can get into at length, but I'm not here to just talk about that, is that these hacking teams that come together here are great sources for future teams that will be the next unicorns that we have in our industry and across the industries. Now, that doesn't mean that a team that's working on Matter Labs' bounty is going to get funded to implement that bounty, right? That doesn't make any sense. It's already been done. But what it does mean is, as a hacker, you can show that you can meet a team, that you can deliver, and that you can provide value. And you can also show your flair in the projects. So the most important aspect, I think, of if you're looking at this more than just an informational sort of thing. In other words, you're not just learning a new tool, which a lot of people are, and that's awesome. And I talk to people all the time who have, maybe they've gone to Camp Biddle, and then they come and they participate in the hackathon, and they're biddling, and they now have a new career. And so that is an amazing thing. And I don't want to minimize that at all, because it's probably the most important thing that happens here at ETHDenver. However, many of the biddlers that are here are really interested in getting into a startup, in being a founder, in finding their niche. And there's plenty of stories about that, right? So how can you best do that? I think the number one thing that you're going to find that sort of delineates the new folks from a really successful biddler team that might be a good candidate for a founder team is that they express empathy for who they've recognized as their users, right? So the easiest way to do this is if you solve a problem that you've had to deal with yourself, right? And as if you're a developer, you know that if you've gone through the pain, the hours of pain doing something, and you find a way to do it better, well, you have that empathy because you're writing this for yourself and for people like you. And that's really great. However, you only get 1 or 2 shots at something like this, right? And if you want to really deliver something that's going to be broadly used and really interesting, you really have to understand, who are my users? Who are they going to be? And it doesn't mean you're going to be right. So when you come up with a team, when you're in a team, you're hacking, this is what your bounty is. You can go talk to the judges, or you can go talk to the teams that have a booth. You can find out what they want. The closer you come to doing those things, the more likely you're going to be to win. The less likely you are to do those things and to just throw things in and try and farm bounties, the less successful you're going to be. It's the same way when you move into, okay, we've actually found something that we want to develop. You find who those users are. Let's take a great example of something that is so screwed up that all of us experience it. Who totally dug the registration process for getting to ETHDenver this year, the application process? Who thought that was the smoothest, most amazing experience ever? Okay, no one is raising their hands because it sucked. Okay, it was a great example of really, really crappy user experience. And we say, oh, the UX of Web3 sucks. And yes, it does, but the UX sucks, and that's a symptom. That's not the cause. The UX sucks because we're not applying empathy towards our users. Now, to be fair, we have some more complicated problems with ETHDenver. We have, we have at least half the people are pretty much newbies. Maybe they've never had their own wallet. And the other ones may have been in it since they were OG Bitcoiners or OG Ethereum. So we get a lot of people. But what we did is we listened to little things and not the big things. So we made it impossible for anyone to use, right? Instead of useful for at least half of the population to use. I will tell you, don't do this in your projects. Don't do this as a bidler, and don't do this as a founder. Talk to as many different people, identify, oh, these are our groups, right? This is who we want to work with, and then solve the problems for them. Don't have them have to jump through a hoop. Any of you who are doing Web3 projects that involve a Web3 wallet, what is your, does anybody, whose favorite wallet is MetaMask? Whose favorite wallet is Coinbase? The wallet, not the exchange. So there's a whole bunch of them, and you may have a different reason. But I bet nobody's happy with their wallet, are you? Like, isn't it harder than it should be? Right? Now, why is that a hard problem to solve? It's a hard problem to solve because there's no money that we figured out in being in a wallet. The only way you can make money when you have a wallet is either selling subscriptions or in selling crypto to people, letting them use an exchange and then marketing it up, right? Which is what you have to do in most of the things. So there's not a case for money, and so it's really hard to find a good wallet that can be out there. Browsers had the same problem early on, right? With Netscape and Internet Explorer and all these kinds of things that came out. I use Brave, most people use Chrome or Opera or something like that. As a founder, it's really important that you find what your audience is going to be, who it is that your target is, and get empathy with them. Talk to them, do interviews, put together mock-ups and say, would you do this? If you're already a builder, we know you can implement a software. You can use something like AI, right? AI will build 90% of your software nowadays as long as you have the smarts to know where to deploy it, how to test it out, and how to get all that stuff going. But the very first thing you need to do before you talk about innovating, before you talk about it, is find that population of people that is going to be interested in this at all. So this first part, I just want to make it really clear. Have I said how important empathy is for your users and identifying who your potential users are? Yes, I see some heads shaking, and I appreciate it. Hey, Zaffi, could you do me a favor? In my bag, there's a water bottle. Can you give it to this gentleman right here in the light sweatshirt or sweater or whatever? Because he's been the most engaging person in this entire area. So, okay, thank you. See, I give gifts too. So I want to make sure everybody understands the idea of empathy. Then we can start talking about actual transformative technologies. So this is where it gets fun, right? You've identified who you're going to be. Now, what kind of a transformative solution do you want to have? And if you can guess, this is about music. It's really cool to follow music throughout the history and the cycle of music. You started out where composers would write their music out, and they would work with musicians to maybe have an orchestra, and you'd go and listen to that. Maybe there was a king or a really wealthy person that would pay for their guests to come listen, right? It was a very small market. As the printing press came around and you could make printed music that more people could play, what you had was the composers that were out there, and they were the heroes. There were people who could play music, and they were these drones that they played the music exactly as it was made. And so now it was expanded to a larger population of people who could enjoy music the way that they wanted to. So then you take it a little further. So we go from printing music. Now you've got recordings. You've got records. First it was on wax. Then you've got records. And the industry that was around printing music had a real problem with the recording industry, right? Because you didn't need somebody to play. You were displacing two different groups of people, right? Or two different types of companies. The printed music, and you were displacing performers. Because now, as long as you had a record player or a phonograph or whatever they were called back then, you could play that music. It was accessible to you, accessible to many more people, right? Then we had things like cassette tapes, and then we had the Walkman, right? And then you had Zune and all these things to where it got more and more personal. The record companies weren't happy about it. Not only that, but now you had cassettes, so people could record off the radio and make mixtapes. We did mixtapes a lot back when I was young, and you could share those kinds of things. This was threatening to the recording industry, and so the recording industry got in and started suing people in the same way, and I didn't mention this, but in the printed material, printed music, they were suing the people who were trying to record music. And then you bring it all the way forward to streaming, right? Streaming media is an inherent threat to recorded music. I don't know when the last time I actually bought an album for any reason, but I want to just buy the album just to have and never really open, right? I listen to the streaming music everywhere. What was the song "Happy" that came out, and the songwriter was like, "Yeah, I make 1/4 cent every time that's played on Spotify." Who's not very happy, but a lot more people listen to his music. He's not happy, the recording industry isn't happy, but these are all innovations that are happening. And as a founder, and as a hacker, and as a biddler, you need to think about what those are going to be. So this is a sort of the same view of that, where you have the performers and how they're getting displaced, and now we're all on our cell phones using really junky earbuds to listen to music that we could have heard in really rich sounds, but at least we can do it in our own rooms. Now, the problem with tech disruption, and we see this in crypto a lot, right, is that there are these moats that created, there are these blockers, and really, what kind of disruption do you want to do as a hacker, as a founder? And the really interesting thing here is there's genuine disruption, and then there's pseudo disruption. And so, if anybody here has taken Lyft or Uber, as all of you probably have, in the old days you had to call up a taxi and they would come pick you up, or you had to go hail a taxi or have somebody hail a taxi. Uber and Lyft did not change the market significantly other than disrupting it in a pseudo way. It's still about somebody in a car doing it. The difference is now they don't have to pay $100,000 for a licensing coin in New York to drive people around. Right? Now anybody with a car who could pass, certain rules could then be a driver. Do you want to be that kind of disruptor with your solution? Or do you want to do something that's more genuine? Wikipedia is a great example of this. Not dictionaries, but encyclopedias, Encyclopedia Britannica. It used to be a huge business. You'd get an update, you'd order all of them, and then you get a new update every year to be for the changes. However, nobody does it anymore because it's all online, and Wikipedia is what really led the way. You look at radio, the same thing. Newspapers, they didn't go away, but they lost maybe 90% of their market share to radio. Television did the same sort of thing. So where does crypto fall into this? Well, we certainly have regulatory issues around crypto, and so when you're thinking about your tokens and you're thinking about all these kinds of things, think about, do you want to fight the fight of regulation? And if you come out with a security or something like that, that is the fight that you're choosing to fight. Or do you want to use the technology in a different way to do something like ticketing, or to do like what IYK is doing, where this is like a chipped shirt, right? A chipped chipped garment that has a way of tracking. There's not a financial aspect to this chip and to this identity that it ties to online, but it gives you a new functionality, a new way of using something that is already there. When you're thinking about your startup, you're thinking about what you're going to do, determine whether you want to do genuine or pseudo disruption. not that one is any better than the other, but know what you're doing, know what you're getting into. And then we've got like big tech, and government falls into this too for regulation. You got these moats that are built, and there's certain things that the big companies can do, and whether it's Google or it was Microsoft or it's the government, what have you, they help steer trends. They define what everyone is talking about. Like if you are a Mac daddy, you love Apple, then you're talking about the new 3D display that they're coming out with, and you're not thinking about anything else that might disrupt them, right? You're thinking about their new product because that's where the hype is. That's the cool new thing. You're not thinking about the things they don't want you to be talking about, which are ways to get underneath Apple's business model. There's regulatory manipulation. We all know how this works. Banking. Does anybody bank with Wells Fargo? Not anymore, no. Like literally they're going through and notifying all of their retail people, and this is what's new. If they can tie you at all to blockchain or Web3, they're telling you they don't want your business anymore, even if you've been there for 20 years. This is a moat that they're building against innovation because the payment technology around blockchain is already there. Predatory acquirers and stifling. Anybody like Mint? Anybody use Mint? So Mint was one of the coolest. You and I should vibe. Can you give him a water bottle too, Zaf? So Mint was this great software that came out that would go and sync up with all your accounts and give you everything that you want information-wise about all of your accounts. Intuit bought it. I think it bought it for like $100 million. It was like a two-person company. Amazing stuff. And what did Intuit do? It's slowly they like, let's ignore this, let's let this go. They tried something where, oh, would you like to pay $2 or $5 a month to support Mint? Which of course I did, because I'm a good guy. And they sunsetted Mint just recently. It was so good, nobody else wanted to do a software solution like that. So now people like me are stuck using crappy old banking software if they want to do conventional banking and credit card management and those kinds of things. And then everyone's heard of acquirers. That's where you acquire someone to hire their team and eventually bury their technology. It happens all the time in new firms, and when you're a founder, that's actually something you want to think about. Do I just want to be acquired? That's got an H in it. It's not just acquired. Acquired and hired. And that will probably eventually bury your technology and your solution. Still a way to make some money. So these are the kinds of things. I'm not going to talk about this because I don't have that much time to talk about the government side of how we can sort of stop these moats. But it's really thinking. And by the way, I try to use innovation to like an innovation new thing. All the slides that you're seeing are AI generated, right, by DALL-E. So you'll see things like misspelling and stuff like that because DALL-E can't add or spell. I think that's like discrimination. That's some discrimination. Anyway. Cool stuff. So one more slide here I want to go in is really think about how you want to disrupt as a founder. If you've already gone down this road, do you want to do something that's genuine or pseudo? You really change things up. Do you want to go fast or go slow? Is this a long-term change, or is this like quick you're in and you want to get the Instagram sort of buyout, $1 billion, 7 people? I mean, who doesn't want that? But do you think you can get it? I don't know. Are you doing this to progress all of us, the world, in a sort of a more regen thing, or are you just doing it for money? Not that there's no judgment. Both are good reasons to do it. And then, do you want to be part of a community and have the entity that you're making contribute to part of that community? And of course, you're here, so the odds are pretty decent that community means something to you. ETHDenver means something to you. SporkDAO means something to you. And so the last thing I'll say is that the whole thesis behind BV, Bufficorn Ventures, is that we make it so everybody that attends here gets Spork, right? If you join the DAO, thank you, Mitch. If you join the DAO, you stake your Spork, and you are now a member of a co-op that gets profits based on the companies that BV invests in. So we're trying to bring the community to let you all know that when you're members, you're actually owners of these companies, of which you may be one. So I want to thank you very much for coming out. I hope this was like remotely interesting and that the images weren't too ugly. I thought they were kind of cool. And if you have any questions, I'm Russell at ETHDenver.com. Thanks so much and have a great rest of ETHDenver.